Hello and welcome to the Xenogenesis podcast. This episode 36, we're covering chapters 10 and 11 from part 2 Phoenix of book 2 Adulthood-Rites of the Xenogenesis trilogy by Octavia Butler. My name's Richard Akin, and I'm joined as always by my co-host.
Michael Glinka. Hi everyone. I just had this thought, Richard, that I'm looking forward to you doing the intros for the part 3 when you have to pronounce this ridiculous name.
I think I got it down. It's Chtkachtak or Chtkachtak.
Well, you're gonna have to do it for every episode, so looking forward to that.
No, you see, this is the advantage of listening to the audiobook, right? Because you get a received pronunciation for everything in the weirdly spelled stuff, so you don't have to try and figure out how it's supposed to be said. Someone else has already done the work.
Actually, I think in these two chapters, as one or the first one or the next one, they actually... No, in the second chapter, I think they mentioned the name of the ship, no? I think Akin thinks about the ship and the name of it. Oh, yes,
yeah. It does get mentioned at the end of chapter 11.
So...
Yep.
I think...
have to say it.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut your voice saying that name, and just every single time when I'm supposed to say, I'm just going to paste over your...
Yeah, that might work.
It'd be just fun. It's just like...
It's a bit more editing work, but...
but still,
Okay, then. Should we talk about your predictions for chapter 10?
Yeah, sure. So my prediction for chapter 10 was the story continues. The bargain from chapter 9. The bargain continues, but eventually Akin is sold to the village and it is time to say goodbyes with the men. Mm-hmm. And he didn't have much chance to say goodbyes with them.
Yeah, not really. We won't be seeing any... Well... We'll be seeing several of them again.
Yeah.
And I think the remaining... well, I mean, we've not quite gotten to that point.
Yeah, let's maybe start then so
let's
we
get
can...
there when we get there.
Yeah.
Let's get into the summary, yeah.
So, the chapter continues where the chapter 9 finished, so with the bargaining continuing well into the night. People eating, drinking, telling stories, trying to out-trade one another, that it's like old-style bargaining. You drink, you eat, and you talk trading, and if it doesn't go well, you drink more until one of is not capable of diplomacy anymore and just like, yeah, sure, perfect, and then you just agree. Tate was taking care of Akin, giving him some vegetarian meal, but... Detecting not enough protein, Akin slipped away to supplement his meal with some peas and seeds from the garden. And while he was doing all that, the pure hell broke loose in the building and shooting started.
Okay, so before we get to the exciting shooting part, I had a minor diversion on the he didn't get enough protein part.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun that he was able to perceive that he didn't get enough protein, but this is actually, to some degree, this is not a uniquely alien ability, at least... I mean, subconsciously anyway, to some degree. There's some really interesting work in looking at protein in food, protein content in food, and satiety. So feeling full, feeling satiated, and there's some. I can't remember the name of the researcher who did this work. I saw him presented at a conference a little while back. And there's a lot of other studies on the subject, but this one was quite compelling because it was this really big mouse study that had a whole bunch of different conditions, and it basically showed quite well that you're prone to overeating in carbs and fat and all the rest of it until you make up enough protein.
Right.
So protein is kind of like a master regulator of having eaten enough of whatever it is that you need. Right. So the if you don't get enough protein, you will overeat in other areas to compensate until you've got enough protein. It's like you need this basal quantity of protein, and then beyond that, you might need some carbs and fats in addition. Like if you've not got enough of those, but you need to have enough protein before you're going to be fully satisfied in the other areas for the most part, up to a limit, right? And that's something you notice even in different animal models. I think there's some stuff that's shown in humans, and you can see it in flies, Drosophila. It's a pretty universal trait. But perhaps more interestingly still, you can break it down even further into the subcomponents of protein. So, protein is like, you have this general picture of protein, right? And it's like steak or whatever. But when you break it down, it's amino acids, right? The individual different types of protein. And if you, there's this work in flies, and I think they've also done it in mice, where if you create a diet that has, so the amino acids in the diet are proportional to the frequency with which they occur in the genome, right? Mm-hmm. So if you take the sequence of all the genes in the genome and you work out how often a given amino acid occurs in the protein, and then you create a table with like this, I think actually methionine is often one of the more frequent ones, but it varies by organism. So, like the most abundant amino acid used is then the most abundant one in the food that you eat, right?
Right.
So if you take a diet that has that property where it's proportional to the amount of amino acid, then and you give that to flies, the flies will prefer that over other diets. They will be more satiated by it more quickly, and they will actually have some like health benefits to some degree.
May I ask, are we talking about the coding genes?
Yes, just coding genes. So it's just the exome.
Not the whole DNA, just the coding that's necessary for actually building the proteins.
Yeah, just the protein coding regions, and also interestingly uncorrected for how much a given protein is transcribed. Just the raw frequency in the genome is enough.
So it doesn't matter, like, for example, if some genes are expressed more often than the others, it's just the fact that the total amount of the amino acid that's being that's present, that's coded for in general, that's important.
It seems like the relative expression is kind of like lost in the noise to some degree. Right?
Okay.
There's enough of an effect just by matching that you can do it this way.
That's interesting. Interesting.
Convenient for computing it anyway. You don't have to bother with getting expression data and adjusting for like relative. But and that so the flies, like, they lay more eggs. They I can't remember if they actually live longer, but they also have like they respond more to dietary restriction, I think, so that they will live longer under certain stress conditions.
So. Like for humans then, if one was going to follow, like because I mean the human genome is readily available and analyzing what's I'm sure there's a data ready available of like what amino acids are like coded for exon.
Oh yeah, you could easily compute that.
Yeah, so if you could, like, for example, find the food that's actually beneficial for you, that gives you enough amino acid, for example. But is it like, what's the frequency that's necessary to consume those protein? Is it every day the same amount, or is it?
Well, I mean, it's not sort of no one's really developed a diet, as far as I know, based on this.
Man, this is okay. I'm gonna put on a recording so that we have a proof to trademark this and or copyright it. We need to come up with a diet.
I did think about it actually. Like, there's like Huel, like human fuel, like where you have like a paste that you're supposed to eat.
Yeah. Basically,
just like make one of those that's amino acid frequency matched.
Yeah. Because I mean,
you heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, exactly. So perfectly, we can do the analysis here and then just check what foods give you that, and we basically come up with a diet that perfectly matches the average, let's say, human genome levels of amino acid expression. But you know what?
Yeah. I mean, you can look up that table. I can't remember the site, but there's a resource that has the codon usage frequency, amino acid usage frequency.
Okay,
so it's common knowledge.
But to be fair, but the thing is, right? If anybody wants to build up muscle, you need more than that. But just the reason why I'm saying that is because recently I checked Henry Cavill's diet and exercise plan, okay, because he looks massive, and there's a reason why he looks massive. His diet is like he has 2 lunches and 2 after dinner meals that are like basically protein shakes, and for dinner he has a bison steak because it has high level of protein. I'm like, just reading that, I felt like I've gained several kilograms just pure protein in his. It's just crazy.
Yeah, and when doing things like eating steak for building muscle kind of makes sense, right? Because it's like it's literally muscle. So
Yeah.
you take it in, convert it to muscle, right?
Basically.
But yeah, no. I mean, I'm a vegetarian, so I have to get my my protein from peas the same way, and the like the same way Akin's doing here.
While I'm enjoying the nice bloody steak, which is just eating a ton of beans in front of me. So, hey.
No,
Like
but interesting phenomenon. Yeah. And it's like the effect is also it's stoichiometric, right? So if you take out the most frequent amino acid, like if you mismatch it, then the efficacy drops, right? So if methionine is top ranked, and then you specifically take out methionine, then the effect goes away.
I mean, it makes sense because like if you would take, what about the least frequent amino acid?
I mean, they have less impact, I think. Although I don't know if anyone's explicitly tried the
because I thought that some amino acid can be converted to some of the other amino acids. So
yes. I mean, the essential amino acids would presumably be more critical also, because we can't synthesize them.
True.
There's a subset of, for the audience, that there's a subset of the amino acids that we need to make all of our proteins that we can't synthesize ourselves. We have to get them from the diet, and they're the essential amino acids. Others we can make from other stuff.
That's why, for example, I really admire you for like doing the vegetarian or even vegan people to even more vegan people, because the amount of extra things that you have to supplement into your diet to get the necessary amino acids in your diet is very
I mean, it's not too bad. I mean, certainly. I mean, I'm a lacto-ovo vegetarian, if you want to get technical. So I still eat dairy and eggs occasionally.
Okay.
So I'm kind of cheating in that regard, right? I've not gone full vegan.
Just get ready
that's a lot more effort.
You just said that, and we should get ready for the pitchforks in the comments. I'm joking. But I was just going to go back to that, the fact that you have to compensate, like if you have to eat more of carbohydrate and fat meals or foods to get the necessary amino acid level, because obviously everything has some protein and it's just lower amount. But the danger of eating too many fatty or actually too many carbohydrates and fatty meals is that because your adipocytes in your body will then start to dysregulate, and that's why you get obesity and your body's metabolism gets really affected. Like, it's crazy, because I remember back in my biochemistry lectures when they were talking about the adipocytes and the biochemical pathways involved in it, and leptin, all those genes that are necessary for correct regulation, and it said basically, if in your diet you consume too many carbohydrate, if your diet is too carbohydrate and fat rich, eventually the adipocytes, the lipid droplets in your adipocytes get too big, and the bigger they get, the harder for the adipocytes is to regulate themselves. It's crazy, is that like you have this feedback system that the moment you have too much of it, your cells just basically like dysregulate themselves. Like they start storing more and more and more, and they just can't regulate it anymore, and it's just cascade basically. It's pretty crazy.
I think when the fat vesicles get too big, you eventually get adipocyte proliferation. So you end up with more adipocyte cells, which means more like signaling capacity, because fat is actually quite a substantial hormonal signaling organ.
Yes.
And then you end up with more fat cells, which is actually harder to deal with fewer bigger fat cells, but like more smaller fat cells or more still big fat cells have more secretory capacity, so they have more. The feedback loop gets worse, right?
Yes.
And then it's harder to go back down because you tend not to lose the number of fat cells, right? The fat vesicles will shrink within the cells, but the number of cells will frequently remain constant.
Yep.
So it's difficult to like get back from having had too many fat cells.
I just need to say that like the vesicle, the signaling on the surface of those fat vesicles and in the adipocytes is pretty incredible, because the fact that that there's such a dysregulation, and I don't remember now correctly, but I think it has also something to do with the localization of the certain surface cell surface proteins that like it's just basically
I mean, there's there's some very complicated stuff going on with like growth factor and insulin signaling that depends which cell type it is that's doing the receiving of the different signals and so on. That I can never quite remember exactly how all the feedback loops work.
No, honestly, it's not for my brain anymore to remember all that. But it's just I feel like the fact that you have to compensate so much, and eventually it's just it can cause additional problems.
Indeed, no. But so it is worth observing that fat in recent years has tended to get a bad rap. It just because
true.
like it's mostly like sort of more sugary carb stuff that actually ends up being converted into the sorts of fats that we store.
Yeah.
But actually eating fatty stuff, especially things that have like unusual fats that we need to have like particular membrane structures, so like stuff that you need for like omega oils and so on that are used in neurons and certain like cholesterol like variants and all that kind of sort of weird fat structures that are quite difficult to synthesize, and we get a lot of from dietary sources. It's actually it's healthy to have enough of those kind of fats. So like the fats you get from things like nuts and so on, the sort of polyunsaturates and all that kind of stuff, they get used in interesting ways in membranes. So having enough of those present is actually quite useful, and they don't necessarily contribute as much to stored fat as does newly synthesized fat from sugars. So eating fats in your diet is not necessarily like directly translating to those fats being stored. It's more sugars. At least that was the thinking that seemed to be prevailing. I mean, this stuff seems to change a lot
all the time.
That was the
I mean, to be fair, the end conclusion I would suspect is basically keep everything in moderation. Don't worry, and don't eat too many sugary things, and that pretty much summarizes everything. Because
yeah, it's kind of funny that we understand in vast detail in like mechanistic terms how so much more of this works, and yet the advice remains more or less the same.
Yeah, I know, it's pretty crazy, isn't it? Because you would think the triglycerides, right? You have basically carbon chains, right? But those are usually sugar chains, whereas the fat is the triglycerol. So it's pretty crazy how misjudged or what's the word?
What are you getting at?
I'm just trying to say that basically the fact that we had there's this massive outrage on of using too many fat foods, and then yet carbonated drinks are so popular and that's for me is crazy. I hadn't had a carbonated drink in years. Because it is crazy because every time when I taste it, even take a sip of it in recent days, because I don't have them regularly, it feels to me as if I was eating sugar. It's just not. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there are all the weird sugar substitutes and so on that try to taste sweet but not actually have the same metabolic stuff, and some of those
they have different flavor, right?
More or less tolerable. Yeah.
Although those sweeteners also get bad rep because a lot of them, people say, oh, they're not good for your health. There's literally sweeteners that are literally 2 amino acids that are used by our body, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just people just being misinformed.
Yeah. I mean, I think there have been a couple of sweeteners that have had weird side effects, and that's kind of people have generalized that to the whole class of sweeteners. So it's not, it's one of those the whole lot gets tarred with the same brush thing. But I mean, the other place where it comes up quite a lot is actually in so-called fat-free stuff. They're frequently if you things like yogurts and so on, they make fat-free yogurts or zero-fat yogurts. They frequently have a lot more sugar in them to compensate for that, because they're using something like some kind of hydrogel to get the kind of same texture, but then they sweeten it up to make it more palatable. So in many ways, the sweeter fat-free yogurts are probably worse for you than the full-fat ones.
Yeah, to be honest, I was going to say it's better to just take the full-fat one than
with less sugar.
Yeah,
because the fat will be in some ways better handled and might actually have some useful features. But the sugar is just going to get turned into uninteresting stored fats if it doesn't get burned immediately.
True.
But yeah. I mean, we've had a long diversion on that. So we got like 3 lines into the first chapter.
Let's get to it. So we left on the fact that Akin was trying to fill himself up with more proteins from peas and seeds, and then suddenly, as he was doing that, he heard shooting and people shouting in the house, and he didn't dare to go to the building. He knew that if he could go in, there was a high chance of him getting hurt. He decided to wait until all the shouting, gunshots, and fighting stopped. Once it did, Akin moved in slowly, but not quietly. He was making some noise deliberately to prevent people thinking he was sneaking in and could cause any further danger. The first thing he saw was broken dishes. The clean room Tate gave him a pineapple in was littered with broken glass and furniture. He needed to be careful walking around because even though he healed faster than the humans, it would still hurt as hell if he stepped on the glass. The second thing he noticed was blood. It was strong enough to frighten him. The smell of blood was strong enough to frighten him. The amount of blood he could smell was good enough to indicate dead people. In the living room, people were lying on the floor. In the far corner, he saw Iriarte. In panic, he ran towards the man. Before he could reach him, someone caught him and picked him up. Gabe. Akin in self-defense bit him, causing Gabe to drop him and shout that he had been poisoned. Honestly, but Gabe is such a wuss. While Akin scrambled to Iriarte. Unfortunately, the man was dead. Several gaping wounds done with a machete, deep enough for organs to spill out. This is an excerpt for a book. Akin screamed in shock and frustration and grief. When he came to know a man, the man died. His human father was dead without Akin ever knowing him except through Nikanj. Tino was dead. Now Iriarte was dead. His years had been cut off unfinished. Honestly, the boy has not experienced many good things. Like, it's only been 1 year old and he already experienced quite a lot.
Yeah. It seemed, his first year or so before he got kidnapped seemed like pretty good, but after that it's been
downhill.
pretty rough. Yeah. Several deaths witnessed.
Yeah. And especially for a being that's really appreciates the life, then
values it and knows what it is, and so it's it has an impact on him. So the other point I kind of wanted to bring up in this section was when Akin sees that Iriarte is dead, he has this thought. So, quoting from the book, his human children had died in the war, and his construct children, created from material the Uloi had collected long ago, would never know him, never taste him, and find themselves in him. So I thought it was interesting that, that Akin was thinking about this in seeing him dead, right? Thinking about the fact that his, he will have construct children, but they will never know him. But this is an interesting kind of reminder to us that the Oankali are still, they're making construct children from the non-cooperators, like from the people who don't want to engage with the Oankali. Again, like without their knowledge, without their consent, they're just they're making children, genetic descendants of these people. Which kind of got me thinking again on the whole like the evolutionary perspective on this gene trade thing. So from an individual perspective, if you're like taking a gene's eye view, then getting as many genes into the next generation as possible is the evolutionary goal, right?
Yeah.
But this is like an alien environment in which to achieve that, right? So this is never a scenario where like the psychology of humans has not adapted to an environment in which the best strategy for getting your genes into the future is to do this weird alien thing.
To be honest, I've been thinking about this, and like, put yourself like in Oankali perspective, right? You have this ability to read genes, and you can actually probably splice them. You could technically develop your own humans at this point. Like, you have enough examples of the variety between the humans. You could literally just have a go at, creating your own. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, sort of generating your own genetic variety by just, shuffling some stuff around. Yeah. And I don't know if we're doing anything similar yet in the attempts to de-extinct in the wild certain species. And there are efforts to return species that have gone extinct in the wild to the wild from genetic populations that are a bit too small to really do well on their own. And I mean, so far I think we're just using breeding programs to try and maximize the diversity in the population, but it could be a thing that we attempt to do, right? Introducing artificial variety for the purposes of preventing things like rare heterozygous diseases.
Yeah. I don't know. We need to check it. Maybe there is something out there that someone is trying to do that, or at least sequence all the animals and then be able to maybe
I think they are definitely doing the sequencing them and trying to maximize the diversity thing. So far, I think they're only doing it through breeding programs rather than engineering. But I wouldn't be surprised if there was some people working on that possibility. But yeah, an interesting prospect.
Right. Moving on. Akin looked around the room, but noticed that even though several people were trying to treat the injured, a lot of people were staring at Gabe and Akin. "He's not poisoned," Akin said with disgust. "You're the ones who kill people, not me." Oof. He doesn't even know how accurate he is when he said that towards Gabe. Akin saw that Galt was dead, but Damek, the real perpetrator of Tino's death, was being treated by Yori. Such irony. Near Damek lay Tino's father, wounded but still alive, and Man was using water to clean his wounds. Akin noticed that colleague behind a wooden bench. He had only a small wound from a bullet in his chest. He must have been hit in the heart. Akin sat beside the man, but no one would come to take care of either of them. At some point, Damek started screaming. It's excerpt from the book. Akin tried not to feel the anguish that came to him reflexively when he saw a human suffering. One part of his mind screamed for an Uloi to save the irreplaceable human, this man whom some Uloi somewhere had made prints of, but whom no Oankali or construct truly knew. Another part of Akin hoped Damek would suffer and die for what he did. And that's the human part, I guess.
Yeah, possibly. That's a little bit of interesting commentary on the Schadenfreude in humans being kind of a property that we have that maybe the Oankali have in a lesser degree.
Honestly, just the fact that Damek survives is just probably the worst case scenario in here.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's explicitly called out in the book that Akin appreciates the irony of the fact that Damek might be the one who survives all this, which is kind of another little indicator of his intelligence.
Yes.
All these little things sort of sprinkled through that suggest that he is pretty smart.
So at some point, Tate came over to Akin and lifted him up. Akin, tired, rested his head on her shoulder. But when Tate warned him that if he dares to bite her, she will bounce him off the wall. Wow. Akin told her just to put him down. He doesn't want her to hold him if she's uncomfortable doing it. But she said that if she didn't want to hold him, she wouldn't have. She just wants she wants them to understand each other. It's just such a weird thing to say, right? It's just like, oh, I'm gonna bounce your fucking head off over the wall if you try to bite me. So obviously, Ken's like, oh, just put me down then, because what's the point? Like, he's like, oh no, I don't mind you. It's just I'm making things clear between us. It's just like, I don't know. It's just such a weird conversation in my head.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's interesting because I think Tate definitely seems to, she appreciates that he's smart and understands that he's dangerous. So I can kind of see why it makes sense for her to make the threat, right? It's don't. If you make a move that looks like you're gonna hurt me, then I will, I'm gonna defend myself, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I can see why she wants to make that clear, and I can also see why Akin is like, okay then,
just put me down.
Just put me down, right? If that's how you feel, then we should probably not be this this close.
Yeah.
Right? I don't want to be held by you if you're threatening to bounce me off a wall.
Honestly, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
She then told Akin about the guns, how they work, how Tino's father, Matteo, came with his friends to seek revenge, but without guns because the people of Phoenix voted them out. There was enough means of hurting each other, they didn't need additional ways. She then took Akin to the kitchen. Actually, before I continue, did they mention that people from the south had guns and they brought them to Phoenix?
I mean, they mentioned that people from the south had guns. I don't remember whether they mentioned if they brought them to Phoenix, because I thought the consensus before Tino left Phoenix was that they didn't want guns in Phoenix. Although I can't remember if did they say that changed.
I just don't remember, because I it's just something in my mind tells me that they the people from south had guns, and at some point they came to Phoenix and they exchanged or something, but maybe they voted not to have guns at that point. Maybe I misunderstood or I misremember.
I think that there was definitely a minority faction that was interested in having firearms in Phoenix, from what it sounded like. So maybe they surreptitiously kept a few.
Potentially. But yes, she then took Akin to the kitchen and asked some clarification on the manners in the house. In this case, it was Akin saying, "Do you want to eat something?" No. No what? No please, right? And it's just it's just such a... And then she slagged off Lilith for not teaching him proper manners. Akin asked her if she told Matteo about Tino. She of course didn't, but worried that Akin did, but to which Akin told her that he lied. But she shouldn't have told Tino parents anything about Tino before the raiders left. And the chapter ends with Tate wondering what Akin truly is, to which he says, "A baby," he said. "A human Oankali construct. I wish I were something more, because the Oankali part of me scares people, but it doesn't help me when they try to hurt me."
I mean, I don't know about that, because his intelligence definitely helped him out, and the fact that he can, he has the venomous stuff and the perceptual capabilities, all that stuff helps him when they try and hurt him.
I mean, when he grows up, he's gonna be fast and he's gonna be able to go underwater anytime he wants, and and he has expanded regenerative capabilities and also super strength at some point. Come on, Akin, you're gonna be basically
Perfect
Terminator.
Yep. His, I think he made, well, I mean, it's so far it hasn't helped him actually avoid this, but it's helped him survive it, right?
Yeah.
And it's the little section there when Tate's correcting his manners and so on. I think that's another little interesting sprinkling, because we get this kind of these contradictory signals, right? We got the thing with the irony, he's smart, he's sort of adult in the way that he thinks, and then we've got this little stuff he's being told to mind his P's and Q's by Tate, and it's this odd contradiction of the adult intelligence in the child body.
Yes, I feel like it's really shows that having intelligence is one thing, but the wisdom that comes with age is something else, right? Because you can have the whole vocabulary and then be able to tell whatever, you express your thoughts in any manner you wish, right? But when you have interactions with people and suddenly you're like, "Oh, I actually didn't know," or "Oh, okay, sorry, I forgot," and stuff like that, it makes sense.
So an abstract understanding of a thing will help you out, but experience also has no real replacement.
Yes.
Right? It helps if you have a good understanding of the thing, but until you have experience with it, the abstract understanding is not really sufficient to, at least to practice the thing in a meaningful sense.
Absolutely. But yeah, shall we go to my chapter 11 predictions?
Yes.
So, because I've read quite a lot of books, and I thought that this is the point where I bet myself that Damek will survive. This is one of those things that, and mentioning earlier that Octavia Butler has this tendency to write pretty dark stuff, I thought, that guy will survive, because it's just to show the irony that not always the good guy wins. The
imperative of dramatic irony is...
one that was responsible Tina's death will survive. And I was hoping that Matteo will survive as well, but who knows, right? This is, typical for like, oh, let's just stab people more in the heart, like making the father of Tina die as well. Like, I was just like, oh, please don't. But basically, the chapter I thought would continue with the aftermath of the fight. And of course, like in book 1, I wrote, Tate is going to be friendly to Akin, but Gabe is going to be a fucking asshole and make the boy's life miserable like he did to Lilith.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of pans out to some degree. Yeah. I mean, like, Gabe seems to warm up a little bit. But
he's neutral, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, then. So, shall we start?
Yeah,
on something?
Sure. So, the chapter starts with the information that both Damek and Matteo lived. Akin tried to avoid them both by staying with the Rinaldis. Tino's mother, a pillar, wanted him because she believed she has a right to him since her own son was dead, and took care of Akin, but Akin didn't want to be near Matteo, and Tate knew that. She also wanted the boy for herself. She felt guilty after the shooting and her misjudgment. There were other women that would feed him and hold him when they could. But before they did that, Akin tried to speak to them before they put their hands on him because 1, he didn't want them to baby talk to him, and 2, he wanted them to accept for who he truly is. That second point was Tate's idea. And I think it's pretty good approach because, I mean, like, if you have this intelligence and somebody comes to you and starts baby talk to you, I would literally... I think I would shout in frustration at some point.
Yeah. That's one of the... It would be a difficult thing. Yeah. I think it's one of those situations I think that like people with certain kinds of disability must face quite a lot, right? Because if you're perfectly cognitively with it, but you have some kind of impairment that makes it difficult for you to communicate, then that must be incredibly frustrating because people probably talk to you like like you're not all there, even when like the impediment is just in the communication, not in the cognitive side. So it's it must be a frustrating problem to have, especially when you encounter new people, right? Because once people get to know you, if you have that kind of odd mismatch between like the exterior and the interior, then people will presume. But once you get to know someone, then like that difficulty in communication kind of goes away. Can you have an appreciation of what their mind looks like more than the barriers to it?
No, absolutely. What was the show? Oh, I can't remember. There was this set of comedians, and one of them was had muscular.
Was it a BBC Three show that was?
Was it?
I think I saw that.
The fella who had muscular dystrophy, I think.
I think so,
and he couldn't, like, obviously it was obvious that it was affecting him physically, but holy shit, did he have a dark sense of humor. He was hilarious.
Oh, yeah. And it was always, like, manipulating the fact that people thought he was, like, of subpar intelligence and screwing them over because of it.
Yes, he was brilliant.
It was absolutely hilarious.
He was absolutely brilliant.
That's a great show.
I was dying. When I watched it, I was, like, I watched several episodes of him, and it's just absolutely dying when he was messing around with them. I just don't remember. I need to find the name of the show because it was so good.
Yeah, and it was a sort of clever pun kind of title, or like a little double entendre on a particular.
It's okay. I'll find it after. I'll put it in the references.
We'll find it and put it in the references.
Yes. But back to the chapter. Strangely, Tate reminded Akin of Lilith. Not in their physicality, but mentality. I'm gonna quote the book in here because it's pretty important. The fact they both accepted things, adapted to strangeness, thought quickly and turned situation to their advantage, and both at times dangerously angry and upset for no reason. Akin knew that Lilith sometimes hated herself for working with the Oankali, for having children who were not fully human. She loved her children, yet she felt guilt for having them. Akin knew that Tate had no children and did not cooperate with Oankali, so why was she feeling guilty of? He tried to ask Gabe, but the man told him not to worry about it because he wouldn't understand. And this is the comment I wrote because of course, he wouldn't know, would he, a piece of slime. The fact that you were number one cause of Tate not being friends with Lilith, and 2, the cause of Akin's father's death. Like, I mean, Guys, I swear, every time Gabe appears, then I have a knife opening my pocket and just wanted to stab him. But to be fair, I understand why Tate would be feeling frustrated, because like if you cannot have children, and the only friend you had, you betrayed your only friend you had because of the man. Like, it's just, your brain first, not your dick. Come on, guys and girls. Like, it makes sense. Just use your mind. Then you can use your reproductive system. Hornies never helped anyone. Like, it really never did.
Well, I mean, presumably they did. Otherwise, we wouldn't have them, right? Evolutionarily speaking. At least they helped some people reproduce, right? It may not have actually helped them in any more broader sense, but it helped them get kids into the next generation.
Well, I mean, yes, except for that particular point. It doesn't really help when you have to make a decision, like, is the girl who just keeps believing that they're on a spaceship, it might be actually right and there's aliens, or are we on the Earth and they're just messing with us? I don't know. But hey, who am I to judge?
Yeah, that definitely feels like more of a brain first situation, if at all possible.
But honestly, Akin thought that even Gabe didn't know the truth. Probably they didn't talk to him about this, possibly. Gabe surprisingly accepted Akin because Tate wanted him to. He didn't like Akin, though, because who the hell needs a baby that sounds like a midget? I swear that guy is just... When Akin went around asking what it meant, people start calling him a midget. Like, what? Just, what? Like, I swear, like, he's even though he may be intelligent, like, the fact that you just go on and call him a midget, like, just, like, I just don't get this. Like, how brain dead do you have to be? Like, he's a thinking young child. Like, the intelligence probably matching. Excuse me. That would be a little bit offensive to Akin. Surprising those humans that are in the Phoenix, and yet they're like treating him like, I don't know. I swear, the more I read about these humans, I feel like the Oankali are right and just should eradicate the whole planet.
Yeah, so I get the feeling Octavia may have been a little bit misanthropic about certain aspects of humanity.
I honestly feel like Octavia Butler is just, the more I read up on it, the more it just feels like the true feelings of Miss Butler's, like, feelings to whole humanity. Just what she truly thinks about the humans and the people surrounding her. And more I read, the more I agree with her. Oh, dear Lord, like...
No, I mean, I think it's another one of those kind of situations where the constructs are being, shunned, right? They have this weird contradictory relationship where they want the construct children because they don't have any children in their society, and they want the ones that look most human, but even when they've got them, they still, pick on their differences. Yeah. It's like, what's
the point then? Like, why do you do this? Like, what's the point?
The contradictions are just like really glaring.
No, honestly,
which is what the Oankali keep saying, right? It's just like you guys are really contradictory when we want to try and fix this.
But in a way, I do agree with some things that will appear in the next in the end of the chapter. But we'll get to that. But except for that, except for calling him midget, he didn't have any more troubles. No one seemed to be coming for him. His new siblings must be born by now and bonding with other people. That caused a lot of distress for Akin, who tried to explain that to Tate. Although Tate tried to calm him down, but Akin didn't know how to explain the fact that the Oankali and the construct bonds at the time of birth and after metamorphosis are the strongest, are the most important. At other times, the bonds are like shadows of what they could be. Akin was scared that he won't be able to bond with his sister, and when asked, he almost cried that maybe she won't be his sister because he's not there. Unfortunately, they didn't understand it.
Yeah, we get an interesting sort of insight there a little bit more into the the sibling bonding process that they have, and the degree to which they they almost need the presence of the other opposite sex sibling in order to develop in the appropriate fashion. It's this kind of environmental context clues for how they should develop, which is a common thing in biological systems, especially in stuff that actually undergoes its early development outside of a controlled environment, right? So things like tadpoles and so on, right? They have it's not like they have a completely divergent developmental program, but the rate at which they go through it varies depending on the temperature. Right? They'll express different enzymes depending on how hot or cold the environment is. But things like plants, very much more context-dependent developmental pathways, right? Because they're kind of more like their macroscopic morphology, right? The shape of the final plant is determined very strongly by the environmental cues, right? Where the light is and all the rest of it. And it seems like the Oankali are almost a bit more like this in some ways. They have that degree of plasticity, right? They will, without the appropriate environmental context cues, their development shifts in different ways.
No, that's true. Just thinking about, because a lot of reptiles also are dependent on that temperature, right, on development. Like I think crocodiles, that they bury their eggs, and then depending on how the temperature is 1 or 2 degrees difference, and then it depends on if it's female or male, right? So
actually that's a good example. Also in fish, I can't remember the fish species, but there are species of fish where they I think they only become male when there are a small enough number of other males, right? So you end up with one dominant male and then all the others are female. But if there's a gap, if the male's gone, then there's kind of a competition between some of the other fish, and one of them will then become male.
I think we mentioned this in previous episode, one of the quite recently, no?
I don't remember now.
Because we had such a gap between the last recordings, then I don't remember. But I think then just before we went on the break, I think one of the episodes we talked about the change of the sex in the fish species.
Maybe, yeah.
See, guys, this is why you can't trust our memories, because honestly, we did something a month ago, we can't remember it. So
no, I mean, on a vaguely related note, I recently read Galileo's Middle Finger by Alice Dreger, which is quite an interesting book on kind of the social movement around the developing science of human intersex conditions and how that developed. It was sort of vaguely related to this kind of changing sex stuff, and it. But yeah, so it's a really pertinent book in the current times, because it's a good exploration of what good advocacy and good science in this area have in common, right? You have to get the underlying facts right in order to effectively advocate for these marginalized populations.
So can you tell me the title and the author again?
Galileo's Middle Finger by Alice Dreger. I think it's Dreger.
That's fine. I'm sure I will find put in the references. So,
yeah, worth reading. Very interesting book.
So let's go back to our book, though.
Yes.
So here's an excerpt from the book. Just let me touch it. Let me be one of its presence. She let me recognize it and know it is a sibling still forming. It would be the sibling closest to me, closest to my age. It should be the sibling I grew up with, bond with. The mentioning of Ashi's name made Tit remember her and Kaguya. She told Akin about what Kaguya said to her about why females are bigger, to protect children born and unborn, and what the purpose of males was. When Akin realized she was talking about Nikanj's parent, he asked her if he could taste her. She easily agreed, and Nikanj could taste something he never tasted before. Long story short, she had Huntington's disease. Akin told her that it could taste it and it should never be active, but she should be near Kaguya to keep an eye on it. To be honest, it should have completely removed that gene. It's interesting, because you mentioned in the here that they have the ability to find the repeat expansion just by test. So just to clarify, Huntington's disease is a single defective gene in chromosome 4. and the side effects are basically your nerve cells start dying. But the reason why is because there's this one gene called Huntington in it that codes for a protein that has a repeats of CAG in the sequence. And in normal circumstances, you have between 10 to 30 something repeats of that CAG. But if you have a parent, usually father, that can spread that gene, if you have more than 35, 36 of those repeats, and some people have up to 120, then that disease starts to you're always certain to have the actual symptoms of the disease. And what happens is basically the protein that's created, it gets cut into pieces, and it's basically toxic. It's the accumulation of those rogue proteins, amino acids, and basically the nerve cells start to die, and that's what basically causes the death of the brain, because the nerve cells are dying.
Yeah, you get kind of Alzheimer's-like symptoms and like tremors, loss of motor control stuff. But yeah, I think it onsets normally in kind of the 30 to 50 range, I think. And there's no kind of substantial symptoms prior to that until the onset sets in, and then it's a degenerative condition that there's no real treatment for.
Yeah.
But it's autosomal dominant, which is to say that if you have one parent with it, then you have a 50-50 chance of inheriting the condition. And if you had two parents with it, you'd have a guaranteed chance of inheriting it, because you only need one copy for it to have this effect.
Do we know what's the percentage of chance of Huntington's? Like, what's the percentage of population?
It's pretty low. It's something in. It was on the Wikipedia page. I just looked it up a little while ago.
Sorry, I just threw the question at you without
4 to 15 in 100,000.
Okay, percent. 4 to 15 people in 100,000.
4 to 15 people in 100,000.
Okay.
Yeah. Of European descent.
Right. Okay.
Might be different in different subpopulations.
Interesting.
Yeah. And from the onset of symptoms, it's about 15 to 20 years before you die from the condition. So it's fatal and pretty nasty. Yeah. But I mean, I was curious actually Akin was able to taste the fact that she had this genetic abnormality, and I was thinking how odd actually is that feature? Like how likely is it that you would end up with the ability to kind of notice that this is actually an odd genetic thing? So, because I mean, the repeat expansion might be something that's fairly common in the genome. I don't know, right? But actually, it's a pretty unique feature. I think I did a quick search of the human genome for patterns that match the repeat expansion, and I found, I think it was only one in the reference genome that was 32 repeats with a 10% mismatch rate. So. Yeah, it would stick out if you had a large triplet repeat expansion like this. So maybe it's not so unreasonable that he would actually find it.
It's interesting that they are capable of sensing that, but it did mention that earlier at the very beginning when we had Akin's perspective that he almost could taste the atoms, right? So it's if he had already enough understanding of the genome, then maybe he was able to quickly discern there's something weird in this.
Yeah, but it's just the kind of high level perception of that, right? I mean, he has this capacity to see in very fine detail, but also to extract meaning from that at a very high level, which is an impressive capacity.
So finishing off, because my goodness, we've had a lot of discussion this chapter. Anyway, the conversation ended there, and Tate started packing up things to bring to the village when Akin told her about where Kaguya was, back on the ship. He never knew why Kaguya would decide to stay away from Earth, to Tate's surprise. She was very surprised with the fact that Akin didn't know about them. No, but the walls in low aren't like in the walls here. You can't hear through low walls. sorry, I can't pronounce law walls, as in the village law. People seal themselves in, and no one knows what they're saying. Tate realized something and then asked Akin what is law. And when Akin explained that except for the guest house, the walls of in every house really seal everything, Tate realized it was a baby ship. Akin frowned. It could be someday. There are so many on Earth, though. Maybe law will be one of the males inside of one of those that becomes ship. But someday it will leave Earth. Akin didn't answer that, but Tate realized that what it meant, that the future construct will go into the space for search for further trade. And for me, this was like a massive red flag, that, like the fact that she realized that it was a ship immediately because she was on the ship. And the fact that it could be potentially mean that the resistance will try to find the trade village and torch them to kill the ships.
Yeah, that's an interesting prospect.
Because then, continuing on, like as Tate walked away, the chapter ends with Akin trying to follow her and not being able to keep up. He wasn't sure how she would react if he told her that the ship, Richard, what's the name of the ship? Would leave the planet barren and dead once it matures because it will devour most of the biomaterial. The planet will eventually die. So for me, it's like if he told her that, I feel 100% the resistance would try to do anything to torch those places down.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's safe to say they would definitely be very hostile to the ships if they knew what they were. But I mean, the other interesting aspect of it is that like there are many of them, and Lo is male, so even the ships have a sex.
Well, do you not remember that the fact that actually the Oankali have a fourth sort of version, like the fourth sex in a way? That they're like.
Well, it was more like I think they had. I can't remember whether or not they were a specific sex, but they were like another morph, right? Yes. They were the kind of ship-dwelling or ship interface morph.
Yes, basically they were like on the surface, sort of cleaning and taking care of it. But basically they could survive in the pure vacuum, etc., and like survive the cosmic radiation. But like it just feels to me that it makes sort of sense that if it's sort of this type of also, like the Oankali have another, like this being that's able to devour everything and then become a ship in the future. So
yeah, everything's an organism and they're all kind of related.
But to be honest, a lot
of horizontal dream transfer.
And now in a way I understand. Like, okay, I get the trade and I get the Oankali's amazing abilities. I wouldn't mind saying saying yes to those. But the fact that they would go and just completely destroy the whole planet, that's not okay with me.
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting approach that they seem to take to their civilization, right? They just sort of go around resource stripping planets and turning them into more ships. They don't really like establish an ongoing presence.
But hold on a second. But in one of the, like when the first book that said there's 3 tribes within the Oankali. The one that travels away that doesn't contribute to the trade. The one that stays on the planet, and the one that trades and then makes their own ship to fly away. So there's always a type of Oankali that stays on the planet. So they cannot destroy it completely.
Well, I think they remain there longer, as it were. It's not like they stay there for long enough to like take all of the planet's resources and then they still depart, right? I think it's more like when they depart, right? The first group goes off in the original ship, not having interacted with them much, and then the second group goes off in a new ship, and the third group like resource strips the planet and then eventually leaves in another ship. I think that was the way that it went, but yeah.
Okay, I thought it was that.
I mean, I think it might take them a really long time to do it. But
yeah, but it's not okay to like destroy a whole planet, like the whole ecosystem. It's just like, I understand.
I mean, like, Michael, I hate to break it to you.
I know. I already am aware of that. But hey.
Yeah, we are probably already doing that.
Yes, I know. So
No, but we don't have an interstellar spacecraft as an insurance
No,
policy,
that's the thing,
so.
that we don't have that backup like the Oankali have, so... But anyway, the chapter ends basically with eventually Akin reaching the house, but then Tate comes out and picks him up and takes him back into the house while he falls asleep in her arms. That's where the chapter 11 ends. It's I don't know, it just feels to me like, I mean, yes, I agree, we are destroying our planet, but at the same time, like, even if we go beyond the point where, like, we can't do anything anymore and the global warming really hits in, humans will probably die off, but then the Mother Nature will recover after, several thousands or hundreds of years. And, new species will evolve and stuff like that, right? So...
I mean, maybe, yeah. Who knows, right? But I don't necessarily think that there's a sort of inherent problem with the idea of doing effectively what the Oankali are doing, right? Because, I mean... ultimately, the planet, like the sun, will expand into a red dwarf, and the planet will get too hot to be usefully habitable. So if we've resource stripped it before then and moved on to somewhere else, then fine by me.
Yeah, but it's gonna happen like several million of years, so it's not like it's gonna happen tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a couple billion year time scale, I think. But
I mean, I know you plan long term, but that's long term planning, man. Like, it's like, oh, okay, it's fine. Actually, if in 4 million years we're gonna do it anyway,
like,
so why?
Eventually. Yeah, I mean, to do something like strip a whole bunch of planets and make a nice big Dyson sphere or other fun like
little project,
giant space to make a structure.
Oh boy. Chris Gesagt, I think,
was
it Chris Gesagt? Yeah, I think it was them who made a video of like, how would we colonize Venus? I think it was Venus or maybe Mercury.
Venus, okay.
How to basically how long it would take and what you could do to actually colonize it. It's really interesting. Highly recommend to watch it. It was just like, how to make the most uninhabitable planet in our system to actual like habitable possible, like a habitat that could support us.
Although I don't know if we would call it the most uninhabitable. I mean, like, the gas giants would be much more difficult if you ask me.
Well, I'm talking about the planet that you can potentially, land on its surface. Like, I mean, yeah, you can land on the surface of the Jupiter on its core, which is basically a solid sphere. But like, obviously, the pressure would crush you. Like, it was like, it obviously, yes, I agree. But like, I'm talking about the planets that have within the region of like what Earth size is and what you could do. But
okay, the inner rocky planet.
Yes, exactly.
Fair enough.
I mean, to be fair, I still don't understand like the Jupiter, like those gas giants, right? Because they do have a solid core, right?
I believe so, yeah.
So technically, you can land on their surface, but it's just.
But yeah, I assume there must be like a liquid layer and then a gas layer. It's sort of a continuous gradient almost down to this, because I mean the pressure must eventually like make some liquid versions of whatever the gas is in all likelihood, I assume. So yeah, I mean I don't know much about the planetary science of the gas giants. It's just yeah.
Hold on a second. I need to check this because I'm just curious how big is the. Okay.
I mean, I'm guessing we don't know.
Right,
well.
So Jupiter, the interior from Encyclopedia Britannica. So outside we have a layer of clouds, then there's a gaseous hydrogen layer, then there's a liquid hydrogen layer, then there's a metallic hydrogen layer, and then there's a core.
Okay, wow. So it's ridiculously high pressure.
Yes.
Because if you're making metallic hydrogen, that's insane.
And the metallic hydrogen layer seems like to be the thickest layer, the biggest one of them. Trying to find like the
interesting.
How do you call it? So the atmosphere is 21,000 kilometers, and it's mostly molecular hydrogen and helium. There is the mantle that's 30,000 to 50,000 kilometers in size, which is basically liquid metallic hydrogen and helium. And then the core is around 20,000 kilometers in diameter. It's a dense hard rock.
That's just so.
I know.
Huge.
It's It just blows my mind. Like each time when I think about the planets and the scale, it's just like, oh God, please stop. My brain is not capable of imagining this much.
Yeah, difficult to intuitively grasp that those kind of scales, right? They just don't really fit in the human brain. Right? Yeah. The ancestral environment did not contain this this range.
Sure.
We didn't need to have a good handle on the on what that would intuitively feel like.
Yeah. I guess let's go to our chapter 12 predictions because it's time to finish off.
Sure.
Based on what Akin told Tay, this is what I wrote. Maybe something starts stirring in the village. Although maybe not yet. So I wrote it very vague, but basically in my mind, I thought that basically the last part that Akin told to Tay, that the fact that the villages are like ships, basically, and she realized that what they are. That something she will speak to other people, and that there's something is going to brew in, like in fact of like as I mentioned, them trying to maybe at some point attack the trade villages and burn them down because, well, it's a ship that eventually will devour the planet. So they maybe don't want to. They would not want this to happen, right? So.
Yeah, well, it does feel like a little bit of that piece of knowledge is a little bit of a Chekhov's gun type situation, right? You've got the Tate now knows that the village is a baby ship. What will happen?
So I don't know. I just felt that maybe because I mean, still we are halfway through the chapter, so still probably not yet, but to chapter 3, which is again, what's the name of it, Richard?
Oh, Hedgehog.
I need to learn it. And basically, so I guess there's nothing still gonna be live for Akins in the village. But I feel like in the meantime, there's gonna be a drama building up, and like them trying to think about how to solve this problem.
Okay. So probably a bit of a more long-term brewing thing.
Yes. So maybe next chapter, I don't know. I just feel like it's still going to be some sort of, maybe because Octavia Butler likes to jump all the time, so maybe a few months pass, or a few weeks or months pass, and then Akin is still in the village, and he lives there, and like he gets to know people, and I don't know. It's like not much isn't happening there, but eventually I guess he will start like maybe some time will pass, because we know that Octavia Butler likes to jump ahead of time when she has nothing to write about, and everyday life doesn't change. So
okay, interesting.
And on that note then, may everyone, as Richard doesn't always tell me anything, then thank you very much for listening. We are Xenothesis. You can find all the places we upload our podcast on xenothesis.com. I was Michael Glinka.
I was Richard Acton.
Bye.